Hey everyone, my name is Colin May. I am the head of training here at IJetColor, and the purpose of today's class is the first in a series we have on getting certified as an operator for the machine. These classes also kind of double as a Q&A session. I know it's slotted for a full hour, but truth be told, I have maybe 25 minutes of material, and the rest is just because I know everyone has questions about this machine, and I want to get as much information out into the wild as possible. So before we kind of get cracking here, do we have any preliminary sort of questions to answer before we get into it?
No, my only question, Colin, is I don't have the C, so I'm assuming that whatever you're talking about is interchangeable.
Yeah, well, I'm in the demo room here, and we also have the 1175 benchtop or the
Yeah.
Pro available to us.
Okay,
Which one do you
perfect.
have?
Yeah. I have the bench.
The bench? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're mainly talking about the feeder on the 1175C today, and everything about the feeder on the C is pretty much identical as on the benchtop. So this will be interchangeable here. I've
All
had
right,
some mixed
perfect.
classes where we have all three machines here, and I'll cover everything as needed. Anything that's different between the two, I'll highlight. My cameraman Chong is now going to take the phone from me, and we are just going to get into it. So this here is the feeder section of the IJetColor 1175C. The entire purpose of today's sort of class is to just run through sort of the anatomy of it, how it's all put together, and loading up envelopes and all that sort of stuff. Just kind of run through the entire anatomy of the machine, the physical operation of it. So to start off here, we can really think of the IJetColor 1175, every machine in the 1175 series, as having four main sections. We have the feeder, the alignment section with the green belts, the transport with the blue belt, and then finally the exit conveyor or delivery with this automatic conveyor. The blue belt transport section and the exit and the delivery here are entirely sort of automated. There's not much that you have to adjust with it. So all the adjustability that goes into getting your media to feed straight happens in the alignment and on the feeder. And so that's kind of what we're diving into here. The feeder on every unit here is comprised of these two fins, which are always going to be center justified. So we have this little knob right here. This knob on the front just controls how and where these fins move back and forth. You can basically adjust their width in order to cozy up on the media, and that sort of keeps them there. On the C and the bench top over there, these are always center justified. They always shoot down the center of the print head. On the Pro, there's some maneuverability, and you can print it anywhere down the head you want. Kind of the main difference between them is that like the 1175 and the 1175C are designed for running basically just envelopes. That's what they're good at, and that's kind of what they restrict to. Whereas the Pro is designed to run just about anything you throw at it. So that's kind of the bird's eye view of it. So this little knob, as I said, moves these fins back and forth. If we want to load up our media, really all we have to do is stick a single envelope in, cozy up these two side guides. If you can get a close-up on this here, Chong, you'll notice that I get them real close and then back them off a little bit. We want a little bit of space on the sides of the envelope. Reason being that air has to get down and under the envelope in order for it to be able to fall properly. If you have them up too tight, it just gets stuck, like so. So always important to have a little bit of room so that your stack is able to fall. Once you've got a single envelope inserted into the feeder, we can move the back wedge up. We want to position the back wedge so that the stack of envelopes sits on this bend down here. If I pull this out, get a better view of it. The back wedge has two bends in it, one where it goes from a shallower angle to a steeper one down here, and one where it goes from the steeper angle back to the shallow angle. We want to rest the stack on this lower bend right here for best results. So slide this under your one envelope, tighten it down. You can see how it's sitting on that lower bend there. And then that's basically getting the feeder set up here.
Yeah.
So once you have your side guides, your fins, and your backstop done, we then have to turn our attention to adjusting the alignment section here. The alignment section is comprised of several different components, and it's really where all the alignment happens on your machine. Envelopes exit the feeder however they exit the feeder, and it tends to be all willy-nilly. So your main things that you can do on the alignment section are moving these two belts back and forth along with these two fences and adjusting the items on the alignment bar. And the alignment bar are sort of critical to getting your media to print straight. So the thing that your media is going to be justifying to, and what sort of defines straight on this machine, and this again is all on the C as well as the benchtop, is this back fence here. This back fence is controlled very precisely by this screw drive, which is operated with a thumb screw down here. Basically, the thumb screw just controls a big Acme screw underneath and moves everything back and forth. So what we'd want to do is partially feed this envelope through, and we can do that by going back here, turn the speed of the feeder all the way down, hold the jog button, and then we can slowly turn this feed up and partially feed that envelope through. So if you come up here, that little maneuver I just did with the jog button moves the envelope in, and now we can bring this back fence in and cozy it up. So what I'm lining up to, I hope you can kind of see it. What I'm lining up to on this fence isn't this outer piece here, but rather the very backmost part of the fence. We want to get that as close up on the envelope as possible, so that way the envelope has to do the least amount of work to get lined up with the back edge. Once that back edge is lined up, all we really have to do is continue partial feeding this envelope. Again, we're just using the jog button and just going to slow roll that envelope through the alignment section. If we look down at the envelope, if we look straight down at the envelope here, you can see that it's staying lined up even as it's traveling down. What we're really checking here is to make sure that the envelope doesn't try to skew or move around as it moves towards the alignment section. And generally it won't, but if you need to keep your media straight, if it's warped, that's what this second wall is here for. So we'll bring this wall in, cozy it up, and now our media is fully constrained within the alignment section. So again, this is feeder, cozy the fins, put that back wedge up, then partially feed, line up your back wall, and then line up your front wall. And now the only thing left to do is to run the media through and make sure that these items on the alignment section are lined up properly. Do we have any questions about this so far?
I do have one quick question.
Oh yeah.
So different size medias, and you're running the A2, which is 5.5 inches.
Yep.
It doesn't come all the way in. And so we're having some troubles keeping the media straight.
The green belt section.
Yep. Those don't come in far enough to allow for alignment.
Yeah. What I'd recommend when you're dealing with smaller stock on this section is to completely abandon using this green belt right here. So like, let me try and line these up. Let me try and line this up on number 10s in portrait, right? Because this is a little thinner than the A2. So if we can get this going, it'll prove the point with the A2 as well. So if we line this up, pretty much exactly as I showed you earlier, if I'm running something super thin like this, I'm not using the second belt. I'm just using the first one, and I'm getting the second belt as out of my way as I can. So we'll bring this on in. So I'm moving this green belt all the way out of the way, and we're going to bring this fence in. What I'll usually do when I'm running something small is I'll use just the one belt, and we can see that this guy is actually running up against this wheel right here, so we need to move this wheel. I had to grab a screwdriver. So basically, I'm just moving these wheels around. And this is really what we had to do last week when I was running A2s, is we just have to rearrange the alignment section here. Bring this on in. All right. And one thing I'm being extra careful of is not allowing these metal fingers and these wheels to coincide. Because if you have the metal finger sitting basically as it is, where it's lined up with the wheel, it's going to act like a lathe and sort of chisel off this rubber coating. So just a small thing that you can easily mess up. It's something we'll replace. You would not be the first, but you know, no one likes having a damaged wheel even for a day. But basically, if you're running something narrow here, we're bringing this back fence and this green belt all the way in. We're going to do the partial feed with the jog button again. Then cozy this up. And there we go. And that's really about it. You know, one of the things with aligning the stuff on the alignment section is symmetry. Symmetry is really going to be the name of the game. So I'm going to try and get these, you know, as far out to the edges, but also as evenly spaced as possible on the width of this number 10. And this is really what you'd want to do with your A2s, is just get them lined up nicely and evenly. Okay, and there we go. So we kind of talked a little bit about what we're doing next, but once you've got this back wall in, and you know, optionally you've got this front wall cozied up, I usually like to use this, but if your media is, you know, pretty straight and flat and well behaved, you don't necessarily have to use this. Once we have these all lined up, all we really need to do is worry about the alignment bar here. The alignment bar is comprised of 4 components here, 2 wheels and 2 fingers. And the basic thing is that you want the fingers as far out to the edges of the envelope as possible, because these are what have all the authority in keeping your media from skewing once it goes onto the blue belt. And then the blue wheels, you want to have spaced near the middle of the envelope, but again, symmetrical. So I set up this alignment section to run portrait number 10s. And if you look at how I have things lined up, that wheel is basically running dead down the center of the envelope, and then I've got the 2 fingers running at far out at either side. If this were a little wider, you know, running landscape number 10s, I would bring this second wheel into the center to give it a little more juice. So once you have your symmetrical alignment crossbar items in there, kind of the last thing you want to do to make sure that your media runs straight is actually a blank test feed. Run some envelopes through without actually printing on them. The reason why we want to do that in particular is because the speed of the feeder runs independent of the blue belt. So if the blue belt and the feeder aren't closely matched, your envelopes will try to skew as they go from the slow feeder to the fast belt. And that will actually mess up their alignment. And that's another thing to keep an eye out for. Generally speaking, what I like to do is start the blue belt, turn the speed all the way down, and slowly up the jog until there's about an inch between each envelope. So come with me to the screen. We're gonna go ahead and start up the blue belt here. On the 1175, you won't have this this target belt speed. This is C and Pro. So 1170. I know we have an 1175 user here. Don't worry about setting this target belt speed. I'm just going to keep it at 15, which is what the C does. All right. So go ahead and start the belt. And now, if we come back over, push the button here. And we are just going to slowly up the speed of the feeder. And what I'm doing is I'm just increasing that speed until there's about an inch in between each envelope. Right about there. We emptied the hopper, but now you get the basic gist. And so if we look here, for number 10 envelopes, we threw the feeder wide open. This is specifically in portrait. Portrait number 10, so you can throw it wide open. I find that this button needs to be about at noon for like landscape number 10s. For something smaller like A2s, noon is probably going to be about where you want it to. And that's really about it. If you're concerned about keeping your media straight, again, you can reintroduce this front wall here. This front wall just attaches here. The other thing is that different types of envelopes can require different hardware on the alignment section. This wheel's getting in my way. I'm going to move it off. I'm just moving the belt by hand, by the way. Just pushing it along. There we go. Okay. So let's talk. So we can kind of talk about like the optional peripherals here, right? Because there are a couple of components on the alignment section which you don't need to have, but can be useful in certain scenarios. We've already talked a bit about the operator side alignment fence here. This is pretty good for media that is having a hard time skewing and maybe needs to be kept in like a narrower sort of channel so that it can't move at all. And then the other one that we haven't really talked about is the secondary set of alignment rollers. The alignment rollers here are mainly for like larger media sizes, think like 9x12s, 10x13s, that sort of stuff, or for envelopes with an open flap. If you're running remittances, you definitely want to have this, and you want to have it running over the crease in the envelope. Reason being, the crease on that envelope wants to poke up like this. If you put this pinball section on it, it forces the envelope to stay flat. Otherwise, it's going to try and poke up. And when it pokes up, that messes with its alignment downstream when it has to go under the alignment bar. So you want to have, for remittances and open flaps, you want to have the pinball section running over the crease, and then you want to have one of these metal fingers running over the crease as well. Each one of your machine came with 2 sets of fingers. There's a short set that's about 7 inches long, and a long set that's about 1 foot. In my personal experience, I like to just use the long ones. I find that they're just across the board better than the short ones. I don't really have a good use case where you'd want to swap in the short ones versus the long ones. These are basically always better. You can use the short ones alongside the long ones if you need some more kind of authority in keeping your media straight as it transitions from green to blue. But I've really only seen that on like extremely jacked up envelope stock. Like it has to be pretty warped before I'm considering putting more than 2 of these fingers on there. And that, I mean, really is about it as far as like sort of the anatomy of the machine and the complexities of the feeding section here. The rest of the time here is basically just Q&A. I can run some random stuff, or we can just adjourn it. What are everyone's thoughts here?
Well, I had issues with the fingers. I found out that, with those 2 fingers, I was getting what they call stair stepping, I believe it was on the print. And I found what was happening is I had those things with too much pressure on them. In other words, I was like twisting it too far down, and that was causing the envelopes to hold back. And I ended up not using them. Just moved them off to the side or pulled them out. I don't remember. But anyway, it seemed to work. It seemed to work real well even without those.
I'm genuinely quite surprised that worked, because at least on the C and on the Pro, they're pretty mission critical, at least in my experience. I'm wondering, like, what type of stock were you running? Was it just 24-pound number 10s, or?
Yeah, 2410. Number 10 window. Yeah, I did do remits this week. I found out one brand ran way better than another. So that was kind of a benefit that I told my guy I'd never order the first one again, order the second one. So that was working better. But what you just told me about putting the bar over the fold, that I did not know. So that'll be a help next time that comes in.
Yeah, I find it makes a pretty huge difference in keeping them straight, because otherwise the other thing is if the flap wants to curl up, it'll also pull the manufactured edge of the remit away from the back fence, and that'll mess with your alignment too.
Right, exactly. The one thing that I did see about it, and I was wondering how to deal with it, was that the double sheet detector goes over the center of it, which is, so half of it is a single ply and the other half is 2 plies.
what I usually do if I am having issues with getting this set to the right height, I'll oftentimes just start over from scratch. So this works with remittance envelopes too. What you can do is just raise it up all the way so that it's just way up out of the way of your envelope. And we're going to do the first step here where we line this up, get these two fins cozy on the envelope. And then if you just run this under, raise it up high enough that it's it's pretty loose on the envelope and you don't have any resistance. Just lower it until it just begins to deflect the center of the envelope.
Okay.
Like that. And that's like a good
okay.
starting point. It doesn't take much. And that's a good starting point, kind of rule of thumb area for getting stuff to feed fluidly. And then, you'd basically want to run through what I showed here. Line up these two fences on your remittance envelope. For remits, I recommend running with the manufactured edge as being what you align to. Because if you run it flap last, it's going to try and line up to the taper on that flap edge, and it'll skew.
Yeah, I found that.
Yeah, people
then
find it out the hard way.
Yeah, then Alfonso reminded me. He goes, "Oh yeah, I remember when the guy was setting it up that he ran the long edge against the fence."
Yeah, that's by far the more stable way to do it with remittance envelopes. I often like to joke that remittance envelopes are a test sent by God.
Yeah, wait till you do them offset press.
Oh God.
When we would do offset press, we would grip across we'd feed them in across the this closed end, but we would always put like a wedge block on the back end of it to kind of make them flat.
Yeah, because
so
otherwise they try to do some of this in the feeder.
And so that's why I was wondering if anybody's ever done anything where they put like a wedge on the flap end of it going in to try.
I've seen it done, and it can work. But I mean, I've seen one person do it ever, and even then, here in the factory, we just run them as is without a block.
Yeah, but I just noticed that I didn't put a very big stack in. I would only put in like 100 at a time, or something like that. That wasn't it. If I tried feeding the whole thing or loading up the whole stacker, it just didn't work.
Yeah, you basically have to keep the stack small. For the one person I saw who did it with some success, was they basically just 3D printed like a little cube and then double stick taped it right to here.
Okay.
Yeah, not right to here, right to here, along the back wall, and then just sort of piled up the envelopes on top of it. And even then, it only buys you a certain amount of stack before that angle adds up and they fan out again.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, more questions about remits, oddball envelopes. Did I answer everyone's questions so far?
Yes, I don't really have a question, just a comment on that. The sensor in between the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that moves a lot on us. Like we have to keep an eye on that because it will, 10, 20, 30,000 envelopes. Obviously, it's moving all over the place, and then we'll get a sensor error, and it will start not printing. And if we're not on top of it, obviously it slides over, and then a finger is in the way. So, is there any way to keep that from moving?
Yeah. So let me show you something. Go with me to the computer here. So that sensor sits on top of it sits on top of a slider in the service station channel. Okay. So if I max lift the print head here, what you can do, and this is admittedly a little bit of a redneck fix, but I've had to deal with this in the wild before. So I'm going to give it to you with equipment I know you'll have on hand. So we'll take off this door here. On the 1175 bench top, this hinges up, but on the C, it just comes right off. Okay. So if you look under here, this whole thing is sitting pretty loose on here. Okay. What I found can be just like a good quick fix is if you just put a piece of tape across the roller here, and basically bracket it into place with adhesive. That's gonna be the easiest. That's gonna be like the easiest and shortest way to do it, I find. Otherwise, let's see. Chong, you put these print heads together. Do you have any suggestions for them?
This is coming loose, right?
Yeah. Like the problem here is that one comes loose and moves around a lot.
Usually there's a piece of tape that goes under this that keeps digital sliding too much. This
Okay.
one seems like the tape back there is a little too far back.
Basically, there's probably a piece of tape back there that came loose. Tape will fix it. So, you
Understood.
can basically get back there and tape that cable down to prevent it from getting too loose, or you can basically bound it in place with tape on the channel that it slides in. And those are going to be the two easiest solutions here.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I enjoy redneck fix, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Last questions. Otherwise, I may call it there. Okay. Well, in that case, I'm going to call it. All right. I'll catch you later. See you later, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colin.